Hi everyone. Starting today I want to try something new. I want to try and sculpt something within an hour every day. I don't know how long I'll last, and depends a lot on my schedule, but I thought it would be a cool kind of exercise for myself to keep my mind to expand my mind creatively a bit. And so this is what I'm starting with here today. So I'm just doing a sculpt in ZBrush, just for the reason that I'm used to using ZBrush as my sculpting application. And I don't really know exactly what I'm gonna be sculpting, but I do kind of know that I want a full figure. I don't want to do a head in this one. So I just want to have a full figure kind of. So the problem with sculpting is usually that you have to, well, you don't have to, but it's easier to sculpt symmetrically. But then you always end up with this kind of T-pose, A-pose kind of boring thing. So I think for the next one, or at least at some point, I'll try to do some non-symmetrical sculpts, or at least try to pose them to make them a little bit more exciting, but this one is going to be symmetrical, and so like I said, I don't really know exactly what this character is going to be, but I know it should be done in less than an hour. So I'm trying to time myself a little bit, so that I'm not like spending 30 minutes just on the head and then don't have enough time to do the rest of the body. In ZBrush I really like using the flatten tool. The basic flatten, I think, is one of the most powerful basic brushes in ZBrush, because you can use it as kind of like a sculpting brush as well, and it doesn't destroy the geometry. It works very well with the pen pressure sensitivity. That's one of the big differences I noticed in sculpting in Blender, is that the flattened brush in Blender just it works quite well, but you end up really pushing the geometry. And I feel like in ZBrush you still push the geometry inward, depending on the size of the brush, of course, but it's a lot more of a flattening effect than a pushing effect. And with Blender it's a little bit too much pushing, like you lose your volume and geometry a bit too much. But it could just be that I'm not used to Blender and I just would have to get used to it. But anyway, I'm sticking with ZBrush because, like I said, it's kind of what I'm used to, and I don't really see any other reason. So I'm just trying to like block out some interesting shapes, and I'm not trying to think too much of anything specific. I just want to like let the creativity flow a bit. And one of the things that I really care about and I'm really passionate about is just character design and what makes good design and when does design fail and all that stuff. And it doesn't mean I'm good at it. I'm certainly have a lot to learn, and it's partially why I'm doing these practice sessions. But there's a lot of theory that is useful, and you can really learn the basics of what makes good design and what makes bad design in theory, but at the end of the day you have to really practice it. So but I love the theory behind it as well. I love the whole concept of the primary, secondary and tertiary shapes and all that stuff, but you really have to then practice that, and that's something that I feel like I've been lacking a little bit in the last year or two, because I've been doing a lot of contract jobs, and they usually involve concept art that was already done by someone. So I like to do something from scratch just based on my own imagination, and I really want to explore at some point a little bit more kind of like how to make cool knee pads and boots and stuff like that, because everything like from the upper leg down I always kind of struggle a bit with for some reason, design wise. like I always end up kind of doing the same thing, and I think because it's kind of an area that is easy to overlook. It's not that interesting, you know. You want to focus on the head and the torso, kind of, and so it's easy to overlook that lower body. So that's definitely one of my weak points that I want to kind of delve into in these practice sessions a bit. So I think at this point I kind of figured out that I want to do something that's, well, humanoid, but is maybe kind of a little bit androidy or cyborgy. So I'm just trying to block out interesting shapes. I'm a huge fan of spherical shoulder pads, but of course it has to match the design of the character's shape language. And for this guy, the shape language is definitely kind of round, soft, spherical shapes. And you know, like this, the same applies for the elbows as it does for the knee pads. Like I'm also not like just anything that's kind of like padding. I'm just not super comfortable with designing. So I really want to figure that out a bit. Just trying some stuff out by dropping in some little screw shapes and stuff like that, but it's not working out. So I use also, like I said, I use the flatten brush a lot, but I also edge polish. It's pretty good. It's a bit like flatten brush. And then obviously a lot of just grab tool to push and pull stuff. And then I have a brush that's a bit like the Damien standard tool, but it's a little bit softer, that I use for a lot of just blocking out. And then clay, what is it called? Not the clay, it's like the clay strips, I think, or yeah, I think that's what it is. Just kind of a dirty clay brush. And then what other brushes? Yeah, some I think one of the brushes I use a lot that I like is it's called MAH cut brush. It's a brush pack, and they give you like these interesting. It's a bit like also a little bit like the Damien standard brush, but they're a little bit wider, and yeah, the profile is just a little bit different. So I like that. And then other than that, I'm obviously using Dynamesh. I'm not really I tried messing around a bit with the Sculptress Pro, which is kind of the dynamic topology sculpting, but I didn't really get into it that much. I think it's because I'm just so used to working with Dynamesh, and also, yeah, I don't know, I kind of like Dynamesh because you just kind of control drag a mask on the side, and then it updates your mesh, and so I like that workflow a lot. So here I'm also struggling a little bit with the boots and the legs. I did find that it helps me to just model those areas in Blender instead of sculpt them. They're kind of awkward things to sculpt, I think, boots. So maybe for the next full figure I do, I'll maybe block something out first in Blender. Looking back at this, where I'm at this point with this sculpt, I kind of like it. Definitely, there's issues in the volume around like the back of the neck and like where it meets the shoulders. Like that, I think I should have added a lot more volume there. Especially looking from the back. From the front it looks kind of alright, but from the back it looks a little bit awkward. And yeah, this guy is definitely a little bit bulky. I mean, it could even be a girl as well. But I wanted to make something that's a little bit bulky, almost a little bit stylized, cartoony, instead of these kind of, you know, lean, slender. A lot of times I see characters with a lot of armor, and they're very slender. And I prefer visualizing, or I prefer seeing armored characters that are bulky, because then it just feels more real, because it feels like they would have stuff underneath that armor instead of just a skeleton. So and I like kind of mixing. I really love sculpting cloth. I've used Marvelous Designer a bunch, and I think it's really fantastic for cloth folds and stuff like that. But I like sculpting cloth so much, like sculpting the folds and stuff like that, that I just prefer doing it that way. And I think especially for a little bit more stylized stuff, I think that's alright. But maybe like hyper realistic characters, I can see why you would want to use Marvelous Designer. And I can save some time as well if you're very fluid with Marvelous. So yeah, at this point I think I have the character pretty much blocked out. I'm just trying to figure out like how to fix these problematic areas within the kind of 50-minute mark. So there's not much, like I think at this point we're at 40 minutes. So I'm just kind of rushing through these areas to make them not look too sloppy, because I want the overall piece to, you know, have consistent amount of detail instead of having just one part completely unfinished. And you know, I'd be happy to take feedback from you guys, or parts about this asset that you feel like, you know, that would have been so much better if you would have changed the design in this way, or you know, just sculpting feedback as well. You know, a lot of times when I make videos with Blender, even tutorials, I get really great comments highlighting how I could do stuff different using specific tools that I didn't know about. And you know, one of the reasons that I make these videos is it's a lot just to learn as I go, and as I'm talking myself through these kind of videos or tutorials, I'm also then kind of imprinting it in my mind, and I'm learning, and it's pushing me to figure out pipelines and methods to get better, basically. And then add on top of that the feedback from, you know, the community. It's very encouraging, and I feel like it helps me get better at being a character artist, really. So I kind of like it at this point. I'm sure I could spend, you know, many more hours on this character, and but I feel like for these sessions I should just keep it within the hour, so I can keep it consistent and not get lost. So I hope you guys like this video, and I'll try to see if I can upload one a day for the next, at least I'll try for the next week. I think that would be cool. Alright, see you guys, bye.